Welcome to Introduction to Web Frameworks. After watching this video, you will be able to explain the difference between Node.js and Node.js-based web frameworks, explain MVC and REST API architectural styles, and describe prominent features of several Node web frameworks. Sometimes Node.js is incorrectly referred to as a web framework. Node.js is not a framework, but a runtime environment that executes JavaScript on a server. Runtime environments are the hardware and software that can execute programs with a particular code base. A framework, on the other hand, is like a skeleton on which an application is built for a specific environment. The framework is the fundamental structure that supports the application. So, in order to utilize Node.js, you need to use a web framework that works in conjunction with it. A framework that works with Node.js is called a Node web framework or just a Node framework. There are a number of different Node frameworks, and we will discuss a few later in this video. So, before discussing individual frameworks, let's first discuss two approaches to building backends that web frameworks can employ: Model View Controller, better known as MVCs, and Representational State Transfer, Application Programming Interfaces, or REST API for short. An MVC approach can be used simultaneously with REST APIs. They are not mutually exclusive. MVC stands for Model View Controller. MVC is an architectural pattern that divides an application into three components: model, view, and controller. Let's discuss what each of these components is. The model layer is responsible for managing the data of the application. It interacts with the database and handles the data logic. The view is responsible for rendering the presentation of the data that is passed to it by the model. And the controller regulates the flow of the data. It is responsible for processing the data supplied to it by the user and sends that data back to the model for manipulation or storage. MVC frameworks are generally used to develop applications that need a separation of data called the model, the presentation of the data called the view, and the module that manipulates the data, which is the controller. Frameworks that lend themselves to developing the back end with an MVC pattern include Koa, Django, Express, and Nest.js. Now let's discuss REST APIs. REST APIs allow multiple web services to communicate with each other. RESTful APIs are subject to certain constraints. The code on the client side must be completely independent of the server code. Client-side code can be updated without interfering with the server code and vice versa. Secondly, RESTful APIs are also stateless. Stateless means the client does not need to know the state of the server, nor does the server need to know the state of the client for communication between the two. REST APIs communicate via operations on resources, and they do not rely on a particular implementation of the API. When a client requests resources using a REST API using HTTP methods such as GET, POST, PATCH, or DELETE, the server responds with a representation of the state of the resource to the client. The representation of the data transferred between client and server is usually a JSON payload, but can also be HTML, XLT, Python, PHP, or plain text. So now that we've discussed a couple of ways to structure the back-end code, let's dig deeper and discuss some of the popular frameworks themselves. Express.js, aka Express, is one of the most popular Node web frameworks. It is used for routing and middleware. Its straightforward coding using JavaScript means there is a fairly small learning curve. It is easy to implement an MVC architecture pattern with Express. It provides debugging mechanisms to help easily pinpoint the errors in the application. Express delivers high performance because it handles multiple operation requests concurrently that are independent of each other with asynchronous programming. It has many HTTP helpers that make programs intelligible and reusable for handling HTTP requests. It has great content negotiation that helps the client and server to communicate by efficiently providing HTTP headers to URLs, fetching the exact data needed for the requesting client. Koa is a relatively new web framework designed by the same team who designed Express. It is designed to be smaller, more expressive, and provide a more robust foundation for web applications and APIs. Koa uses async functions in such a way that callbacks are not necessary, and it increases the ability to handle errors. Koa is appropriate for applications that are high-performing, demanding, complex, and developed by large, experienced teams. Socket.io is an excellent choice for developing apps where bidirectional data is exchanged between clients and servers in real time. You can develop applications that utilize WebSocket rather than HTTP for communication. Its servers push data without the need for the data to be called by the client. It is appropriate for applications such as chat rooms, texting applications, video conferencing, and multiplayer games. Next, Happy.js is a reliable open-source Node web framework with lots of security built into it. There are many built-in plugins, so you won't need to use unofficial middleware. It is most known for developing proxy and API servers, HTTP proxy applications, REST APIs, and other desktop applications. And finally, we have the Nest.js framework, which is appropriate for building dynamic, scalable enterprise applications in conjunction with its flexibility due to its multitude of libraries. It follows an MVC architecture. Nest.js is built on top of Express, so they have similar purposes and provide comparable functions. It is compatible with TypeScript, which is a superset of JavaScript. It works in conjunction with the front-end Angular framework, and Nest combines both object-oriented and functional reactive programming, which potentially doubles productivity and application performance. In this video, you learned that Node.js is a runtime environment, whereas Node web frameworks use the Node.js environment in order to run. The MVC architecture style divides a backend application into 3 parts: the model, the view, and the controller. REST API frameworks use HTTP methods to communicate with each other, and several popular Node web frameworks include Express, Koa, Happy.js, and Nest.js.